Today on Exploring Scotland's History, I'm going to tell you the story of the Tinker's Heart and a short history of the Tinkers and their role in Scottish history. We are going to start our story up on the old stone bridge. It's a fair wee distance out of Inveraray, and this traditionally is where a lot of the Tinkers would have camped. It's really quite a beautiful part of the country. We have lovely misty mountains as well. A nice walk. On the old stone bridge here, there are lots of signatures and symbolism. We have a lot of hands. There's a thistle, and various names have been inscribed as well. A lot of the old Tinker camping sites, they've been ploughed over and fenced off in the 20th century, but the would have congregated here. Like I say, they've clearly signed the bridge, but they would have normally appeared in two tents, sort of facing into each other with a fire in the middle, and that's where they would have plied their tin trade. It is said that you could hear the tapping of their trade at the full length of the loch. The first mention of Tinkers in Scotland was hundreds of years ago in Perth during the reign of the Lion. 1165 to 1214 was William the Lion's reign, and there were Tinkers that owned land in the Perth area. For anyone that knows Greenock, there is an outdoor shop, quite a prolific one. We did have a branch of it up in Oban for a while, called Blacks. Blacks have always supplied the canvas for the bow tents of the Tinkers. The Tinkers would have used a large piece of wood, 12 foot long, an inch wide, and bowed it over with the canvas on top. They paid Blacks of Greenock cash up front, so they were ensured that they always stayed front of the queue when they required their canvas material for their tenting. That's my initials, but it wasn't me. So we've now stopped at the Tinker's Heart. It's just on the main road towards 𝕬𝖊𝖆𝖆𝖗. It used to be the meeting of three separate roads, and we'll tell you a wee bit about it. It is thought the original Tinker's Heart would have comprised of a whole lot more parts of quartz that we see there. There were roadworks in 1928 and the heart was removed. A lot of the locals and Tinkers had a wee bit of an issue with that, so it was reinstated, but clearly not as amazing as it was first time round. The other good news is that in 2015 it received status as a scheduled monument. Like I said before, Tinkers have been part of Scottish history for many, many years, and now generations to come can come and visit the Tinker's Heart. The origins of the site are centred around the Battle of Culloden. There were tinkers that headed off to Culloden and gave their lives for the Jacobite cause, and it's said that the women originally put up the tinker's heart as a memorial to the fallen. It's really quite stunning along here as we walk down the old military road. Obviously after Culloden there was land clearances, and at that stage the tinkers welcomed strangers into their way of life. They took in people who had suffered because of the famines and people who had been cleared off their lands, and welcomed them to the tinker community. I will say at this point, please don't confuse tinkers with gypsies. Completely different race of people. It is said that a lot of tinkers had gypsy blood, but tinkers and gypsies feel they are two different people. By the mid-19th century, the area was revered by tinkers, and they would have come here for weddings and baptisms. The tinker folk were very traditional. Obviously they traded in tin and worked with tin and were masters of that work. They had very honest beginnings. They believed their children should be properly baptised. They believed that the women and men folk should be married, and they believed they should have a proper Christian funeral. As we see today, there are even tokens of how the tinker's heart is revered. People leave flowers and leave coins and that as a token of the esteem they feel for it. The tinker folk would have referred to the tinker's heart in those days as Hell's Glen heart. We are in a glen here, and it is known as Hell's Glen. Right into the 20th century, tinkers would have been married on this heart. Lady George Campbell has a written story of a tinker wedding in 1928. It was referring to a wedding in 1872. It was the marriage of Isabella Brodie and John Luke, and they were married by a minister who had come through the glen from Loch Fyne. The 20th century really saw the beginning of the end of the tinker life as we know it. And tinkers found it hard to give up their traditions and their traditional way of life. But really by the 1960s, 1970s, they were an unknown breed, unfortunately. There is a saying, not worth a tinker's damn, and today that generally refers to any kind of profanity. But in those days, it referred to the dam that they would have used to fix your kettle or your teapot or your saucepan. They were tin discs that they joined together and soldered, and would be an instant fix. So basically the tinker could come to your home and the hole in your kettle would be sorted in no time. They were very, very talented. As tin became more expensive and their way of life started to die out, they sort of became hawkers. And what I mean by hawker is someone who buys and sells anything. I can remember my grandmother talking about the tinkers coming to us. I wasn't born at the time, but they would have sold pegs and bought bits of scrap metal. What I would say is, if a tinker found scrap metal on the roadside and it was beside a church, they wouldn't lift it. They would get in touch with the minister and give him an offer for the metal. So there was a real honesty there, and they were very God-fearing. So that's the story of tinkers. Honest, industrious, could turn their hand to most things. If you enjoy stunning Scottish scenery, if you would like to learn more about the history of Scotland, please subscribe. You can join me on Facebook and Instagram, both of the same name, Exploring Scotland's History. Thanks for watching.